Now, prior to March 2020, had you ever been involved in electoral logistics and so on in Guyana?
Yes.
Are you familiar with the registration process?
Very much so, yes.
And had you been involved in the reforming of that process?
Yes, I had a contribution in it, yes.
Okay. Well, could you tell us what that reform was?
Well, in 2006, and just after the 2006 elections, the PNC was protesting on the streets because they said no verification, no vote. So the Private Sector Commission asked to meet with them to find out what is it they meant. And they said that they needed biometrics in the registration process. We tried understanding what is it that they were talking about, and we were not sure. I was in Washington afterwards at a program I was doing at the National Defense University, and there was a gentleman who came to us to do a program on airport security using biometrics. I asked him about biometrics in elections, and he said they just finished a program in Jamaica, and maybe if we went to Jamaica we'd find it. So I flew to Jamaica through the private sector of Jamaica, met with the Elections Commission in Jamaica, and they showed me what they were doing. I videotaped it and I brought it back to Guyana, and I gave a copy to the leader of the opposition, president at the time, and the chairman of GCOM, which was Dr. Surzbali at the time. Shortly after, I think GCOM sent a team to Jamaica, and then the government of Guyana, I believe, bought a very expensive software for $600,000 US that would be used in the transformation of biometrics and digitizing the manual fingerprint scanning into the database. And that was done and it was agreed on, done, and the first time we used it was in 2008.
Great. Now, what does PNC stand for?
People's National Congress.
So, before that, was everything paper-based?
Everything was manual, and there was a big concern that, and the private sector agreed with them, that there was a big concern that you could have had duplicates on the National Register of Registrants and the voters list because you were just depending on face recognition by just watching at a person and their biodata. And so we did agree with them that adding the fingerprints biometrics to the registration process and going through the regular scanning of the database to take out duplicates would make the database a lot more secure and credible.
Yes. Now, I take it that the PSC continued to work with GCOM after you initiated this process?
Yes, the Private Sector Commission constantly met with GCOM, with the chairman, with the CEO, because we were very concerned about the democratic rule, the rule of law, because it is exceptionally important for private sector development that we live in a society of the rule of law and democracy and respect for the Constitution. And so we constantly would meet with different stakeholders, the parties, GCOM, to discuss and ensure that things were happening in a way that we were comfortable with, and we were contributing to that discussion.
Okay, so you said initially the process had been manual, and then there was this reform which led to digitization of material. So the fingerprints were digitized, correct?
It was taken manually, scanned into the computer, and digitized into the computer.
And a photograph was also digitized.
That's correct.
So is it that a folio was created?
Yes, the folio was created. The national ID card was also upgraded and improved in terms of the security features. So every ID card now had 3 pictures in it. The big one, and another one, small one in front, and the back of it had another one as well. And they also agreed at that time to introduce the continuous cycles of registration, and they were registering 14-year-olds in the schools, and then the database, when they become 18, would kick them over to the voters roll. And so we were very, very pleased with the new system, the new data, the new ID cards, the fingerprints, and the new system to register.
Sure. And the folio, apart from having the digital material, would it also have biodata on it?
It will have your photograph and all your biodata, that's correct.
I see. And as far as you know, is this folio used by GCOM presiding officer during the course of elections?
As far as I know, when the 5 GCOM staff, the presiding officer, and the parties in the room all have a folio with your name and your photograph in it. So when you enter the room, everybody has to agree that you are the person standing in front of them. And they do that by your photograph, and if there's any doubt, then they would ask you questions that you would have to answer that match the biodata that they have in front of them.
Now, sir, I would take it that after all these years, you have witnessed the outcomes of many elections in Guyana.
Yes.
And do you take a view with respect to any of those?
Well, I take it very personal because as a GDF officer, back in the 70s and 80s, the Army was involved in election logistics. Something that when I became senior enough, it bothered me that we were not doing the right thing. We were involved in a process that was interfering with the democratic process of Guyana. And so when I got into the private sector and started my company, came back to Guyana, I was determined to do whatever I could do to make sure and prevent ever again our uniformed personnel ever again getting involved in that electoral process, and to ensure that our democracy was strong and alive. And the first time we got involved was in 1992 when Jimmy Carter came to Guyana, and Desmond Hoyt agreed to the process that needed to be reformed. And when that was done in 1992, I actually felt very comfortable with the electoral process that started in 1992, where we were now counting the votes at the place of poll. Before that, we used to vote and then collect the ballot boxes and transport them 100 miles away to some central place to count it. And along that process is where we had a lot of questionable things that was happening. So the new process was something I was very comfortable with.
I take it at some point you left the Army.
Yes.
Now, do you know Mr. Keith Lowenfield?
Yes.
And how did you come to know him?
We both were in the Army together and we were in training programs together.
Now, while you were chairman of the PSC, Mr. Lowenfield was CEO of GCOM,
Yes.
correct?
Yes.
And prior to the March 2020 elections, did you have any interaction with him?
Yes, constantly. We were constantly in touch with each other.
And why was this?
Well, because first of all, he was not always the CEO. He was, I think, the deputy, and he worked in GCOM. And so I would always work with him because of the pilot, the geography of Guyana is something that I am very familiar with. So I was able to give a lot of advice sometimes and guidance in the logistics of moving things around Guyana and personnel and so on. So I always worked with them on that. And then the Private Sector Commission have always applied for and was granted observer status. So constantly we dealt with the management of GCOM, which included Lowenfield, and we always had a very, very good relationship.
Now, do you recall the 2nd of March 2020? That's the day of elections.
Yes.
On that day, what did you do?
The ABC ambassadors, which I have been doing for many elections, while the international observers were deployed at polling stations, the ambassadors wanted to particularly do a spot check around the country. So I would normally fly them around. I would take off from Ogle in the morning. We flew to Region 2 at the Escribo. We visited about 4 or 5 polling stations. They were able to observe what was happening. Then we went to Bartica, Region 7, Region 10, Region 6. And what we found was an amazing demonstration of professionalism by the GCOM staff. Actually, I was very proud of Lowenfield, the work he was doing. When we got there, it was like a franchise. Everywhere you went, the efficiency, there was no problems. The lines were moving, and it was a very, very professional execution of his duties. And I was very pleased with it. I'm very pleased to have known him.
Yes. Well, he's still alive. Oh, you said ABCE. What do you mean by ABCE?
The Americans, the British, the Canadians, and the European Union.
I see. So as far as you observed on election day, the voting process was working well.
Absolutely.
Do you recall the afternoon of the 3rd of March 2020?
Yes. In fact, I wonder if I... Yes, I do. Yes, I do. Yes.
And did you go to Ashman's building on that afternoon?
Yes.
In what capacity did you go there?
I was the head of the Private Sector Commission Observer team. And so I was basically moving around as I did during the day. And that, so I would go and we had a lot of observers from the private sector at the Ashland building. So I would stop in to check with them to see how things were going as well.
Sure. When you got there, what was happening?
If my memory recalls me correctly, at the time I got there, I don't believe there was any activity. I could be wrong because I know the process was stopped on the day of the 3rd. And it never, the next day when Mr. Mingo went to the hospital, but it stopped sometime on the 3rd, and I do not remember exactly when I got there, if they were still, I believe they had stopped, but I do not absolutely recall. But I know they stopped on the 3rd and they never resumed their operations until later on the 4th.
All right. So did you stay very long at Ashman's?
About an hour or so.
And did you return there on the 4th of March 2020?
Yes.
During that period of time, did you see the CEO?
Yes.
And were you familiar with the deputy CEO, Ms. Myers?
Yes.
Did you see her on the 4th at Ashman's?
Yes.
And what was happening at that point? Can you recall?
Yes, by the time I got there on the 4th, there was a lot of concern that after Mr. Mingo apparently had gotten ill and they had evacuated him from the building in a stretcher. And later that morning, some female staff of GCOM appeared to continue the tabulation process. But this time they were not doing what Mingo started to do, because when Mingo started the process on the morning of the 3rd, he was doing it correctly. And the people in the room were satisfied with what was happening from the morning of the 3rd. I think it's 2 o'clock in the morning. And he was doing it statement to poll by statement to poll. And they went into the 3rd. And when he stopped, and then next day he went into the hospital, the staff that came to continue the process changed the procedure that he was using. When they came into the room, they had this spreadsheet, which they call a broadsheet. Right. And they started to call, and people in the room were very, very upset because they were calling wrong numbers.
Sure. So by the time you got there, it appeared that there had been some sort of problem which had arisen.
That's correct.
And during the course of that night, that's to say from the 4th into the 5th of March 2020, I don't want to go into too much detail, but can you recall that there were other disruptions?
Well, I'd like to say to you that on the day of the 4th, the ABC ambassadors and a lot of the senior leaders of the international community descended on the Ashman building. So a lot of them were in the building and observing what was happening, and they were all appalled. And then it went on into the night when you had all the confusion went on there, and then on the 5th is when they attempted that. So they stopped it. They never completed it. And my observer in the room, Kit Nascimento, reported to me that they did not finish the tabulation. And then Mr. Mingo turned up and said he was ready to do a declaration.
And when you said declaration, what
he was declaring the results of Region 4, even though the process was not completed.
Sure. Kit Nascimento was an accredited observer for PSE?
That's correct, yes.
Now, what did the PSE then do?
We called a press conference at the Private Sector Commission building, and we commenced to keep the nation and the members of the Private Sector Commission informed of what we were seeing and our concerns of what was happening.
Did you have any conversation with the CEO?
No. Every time because as an observer, it was very important to me to stay arm's length away from the GCOM administration at that time, and so I did that. I chose not to be in contact with him, and I didn't.
Okay. And did you try to contact anybody else, or did PSC try to contact anybody else from GCOM's
Yes, I actually,
executive?
when there were the confusion going on in the room at GCOM on the night of the 4th, I went to the chairperson of GCOM and asked her to come downstairs because all of the party agents and the observers were really, really upset to come downstairs and to try to talk to them. And she did. We went downstairs together. She stood in the room, she spoke to everybody and asked them to be tolerant and so on. But the people were not prepared to let it go. And then I also were in constant contact with the ABC ambassadors who were determined not to leave the room as well, and they stayed throughout the process.
When you say, Mr. Gouveia, you went to the chairman
Yes.
of GCOM,
Yes.
where was she?
She was upstairs in the same building.
In the Ashland building?
Yes, and she was in a room there. And when the confusion was happening downstairs and it was building and the tension was getting higher and higher, and I thought that maybe if she came downstairs and talked to people, that we could lower the tension because Lowenfield was not there.
You went to a room where she was being
Yes.
accommodated.
Yes.
There was a door leading to that room?
Yes.
Were you able to open the door?
Yes. And there was no confusion there. I spoke to the police.
I'm not asking
Sorry.
you about
Yeah.
confusion. I will make it clear to you what I'm asking.
Yes.
You were able to open the door yourself?
The policeman opened the door for me.
He was in or out of the door?
Out of the door.
Did you observe whether the door had any handles on it? Or you didn't?
No,
pay
I didn't.
attention?
I didn't recall.
You don't recall?
No.
Thank you.
So there was a policeman standing outside the door of the chairman's office,
Yes.
and when you entered the room, was there anyone in there with her?
There were
At that time?
There were other policemen. I think one or two other policemen sitting and standing around in the room. But I had no problem accessing the chairman at the time.
I see. Was anyone from GCOM in the room with her?
No.
Now, at the end of it, did the PSC do a report?
Yes.
And I'm going to show you a document and you indicate to me whether that is the report.
Yes.
I'm asking that this be admitted as GG2. And 3 copies have been provided for the commissioners. That's a correct document. Now, sir, we have a bundle of documents to go through here, so please be patient with me as I. Sorry? Of course.
Mr. Gouveia, this one that we just received, I notice it doesn't have a signature or anything, but this was your organization's
Yes.
official report. Was it issued to any party or any group or any organization?
Well, when it was finished, a copy was given to GCOM, and I think shared with the international community as well.
Now, you said you were appointed as an accredited observer. Did you have to put in an application?
Yes, the private sector normally write the chairperson of GCOM requesting to be accredited, and then they would then write back with the authorization, with the approval, and then we'd have to send them the list of names of people, and then they will send back a blanket approval for the names that we submit to them.
Sure. And did you get a letter from GCOM to PSC giving approval?
I would have to say yes, but I do not particularly recall the letter itself, but I do, we were all accredited and issued ID cards, so I would have to say yes.
Sure. But are you familiar with the name Kim Beck?
No.
Okay. Well, then I won't ask you if you can identify this document.
Just ask Mr. Gouveia, I take it you had input into the document.
But I didn't write it myself.
No.
Yeah, well, yes. The person that wrote it would have been consulting with all of us
Yes.
in the room, yes.
On the evening of the 4th of March, 2020, when you returned to the Ashman's building, at some point you said you remember that female GCOM officers were calling out numbers, presumably of votes garnered by the respective competing political parties, and that party agents were complaining and protesting that the numbers being called did not correspond to the numbers on their statements of poll.
That's correct.
Yes. As an accredited observer for a reputable organization, the Private Sector Commission, did you endeavor to do any verification of this complaint?
Yes, because we had copies of the statements of poll as well.
Yes. And what
And
was...
we did not interfere in the process. Observers do not interfere in the process. We observe and then we do what we do. We write a report afterwards. And so what we endeavored to do was to observe what was happening. There was all the other observers in the room as well. And the political parties are the ones that was protesting and getting involved in the process. The observers, we just observe. We don't get involved.
That was not my question.
Okay.
Hearing this complaint and the protest by the political parties,
Yes.
your numbers are not corresponding with my statements of poll.
Correct.
You're an accredited observer
Yes.
of a reputable organization.
Yes.
You had statements of poll.
Yes.
Did you do any verification yourself?
Yes.
You don't have to get involved.
Yes,
Did
we
you
did.
establish then, putting it another way, that the complaints and the protests by the political parties was sound, valid, legitimate?
Yes.
You did?
Yes.
Thank you.
Could I just say it was I did not myself. There were private sector observers in the room. Kit Nascimento, for example, who had, and he was reporting to us because I did not have it myself, and he was reporting to myself as the head and chairman of the Private Sector Commission that he was verifying what was happening as real.
So you did not verify?
Not myself, no.
So you could not answer yes just now, that would have been wrong. Because my question was directed to your involvement. You did not verify.
Right.
So what you said just now was not correct.
Okay. Yes.
That's not a big issue.
No, that's fine.
If you were informed, I can accept that.
Yes.
Well, sir, you were not only informed by Mr. Nascimento, but you relied on his observations.
That's right.
And that is because he was one of the accredited observers for the
That's right.
organization which you chaired.
That's right.
Okay, so I have some documents which I'm going to ask you about. You said that you all issued a press release, and this was on the 5th of March 2020. So I'm going to ask you whether you can identify whether this was a press release that you issued.
Yes, this is the press release that was.
Thank you. Might this be admitted as, yes, 3 copies? Right, it's also there on the screen. And just to indicate what you all were complaining, you said the Private Sector Commission is appalled at the blatant and deliberate attempts by GCOM to destroy our democracy by derailing the tabulation process of the 2020 election results and attempts to subvert the will of the people. And this press release was made after you had had input from all of the observers for your organization.
That's right.
Now, you also told us that the ABCE ambassadors had issued a statement on the 5th of March 2020. You told us that?
Yes.
And these were the same persons who you had taken around the country to observe the voting process on the 2nd.
Correct.
So you had known them.
Yes.
And if you see a copy of that statement which they issued, will you be able to identify it?
Yes.
A document is now placed in your hand. Have a look at it.
Yes.
Thank you. I'm asking that this be admitted as GG5. GG4, I'm sorry. And just to be clear, this joint statement was issued on behalf of the British High Commissioner, the Canadian High Commissioner, the Ambassador of the European Union, and the Ambassador of the United States of America, correct?
Yes.
And essentially what they said in this statement is that they had questioned the credibility of the region 4 results published by GCOM today.
That's right.
Now, is it correct to say that this statement was issued after Mr. Mingo had purported to declare the results for District 4?
I would have, based on that, I would have to say yes.
Thank you. Okay, and let me see. The EU Election Observation Mission had also issued its own statement on that day. Not so?
Yes.
If you see that, will you be able to identify it?
Yes. Yes.
Might this be admitted as GG5? Now, among other things, this statement from the EU basically made the observation that the returning officer for Region 4 had declared results before the legally required tabulation process had been completed. Not so?
Correct.
On the 12th of March 2020, the EU had written to Mr. Mingo. Are you aware of that? Did you get a copy of that?
The private sector would have gotten a copy of it, I believe.
Okay. Now, if you can't recognize a document, simply say.
Let me have a look at it. If I maybe
Sure.
I will tell you.
No problem. It's not the best print, but we'll make do with what we have. You recognize that?
I recognize the document, but I'm sorry, my eyes is. I couldn't read it. Sorry about it.
Okay, no problem. Yes, it's not a clear copy at all. And your commission, the Private Sector Commission, issued another press release on the 18th of March 2020. Not so?
Yes.
I take it if you see that one, you'll be able to identify it.
Yes. Yes.
Two copies which commission it. What a nonsense. Might this be marked GG6? And so this one, and it's up on the screen, but the entire document is not there. This one was issued because your commission had been concerned about the role played by the Guyana police force in the elections,
Yes.
correct? And you issued a statement saying that in the view of your commission, that the Guyana police force seemed to have been acting under direct political direction. You
Yes.
issued such a statement. And you also said members of the commission and your observers had witnessed the deliberate and forceful intervention of heavily armed police in preventing the oversight of the statements of polls at GCOM by physically removing accredited political party representatives, accredited observers, including private sector observers, and the members of the media.
Correct.
Your statement was a very strong one.
Yes.
And I take it when you issued this statement, you were not issuing this statement in a personal capacity?
No.
And you also indicated that the commission had made numerous attempts to telephone the commissioner of police about the matters identified without success.
Correct.
You had also written to GCOM. Yes? You had written to GCOM on several occasions after the March 2nd general elections. And on the 26th of March 2020, did you get a reply?
I would have to see the correspondence.
Sure, of course. Good print.
Yes.
Is that the reply you got? You subsequently wrote to the chairman again on April 23rd, 2020, not so?
I'd have to see the document.
Sure, of course. I'm going to ask you to have a look at this document.
Yes.
I'm asking that this be admitted as GG8, 3 copies. And in this letter, the PSC was expressing what it described as its concern about the fraud that was perpetrated by the senior staff of GCOM during the Region 4 tabulation process. Correct?
Correct.
And as importantly was the fact that 53 days had passed since the elections had been held, and your commission was concerned about that.
Absolutely, yes.
Now, your commission also wrote to the Secretary General of the Commonwealth Secretariat about what was happening post-election, or what had happened.
Yes.
And if you see that letter, will you be able to identify it?
Yes.
And in that letter, I have to say, did you set out your concerns?
Can I have a look at the letter, please? Yes.
Of course.
Yes. Yes. Thank you.
GG9, please.
Thank you.
And is it correct to say that your commission also wrote to the president of the European Union Commission?
Yes.
If you see your letter again, will you be able to identify it?
Yes. Yes.
Might this be marked GG10, please? You also wrote on the 27th of March to the Inter-American Commission on Human Rights. If you see your letter, you'll be able to identify it.
Yes. Yes.
GG 11. And if I may just be given a minute to separate some of these documents, please. Thank you. And you wrote to the General Secretary of the OAS. Can you recall whether the OAS had observers here at the time of the March 2nd Guyana elections?
Yes.
If you see the letter you wrote, will you be able to identify it?
Yes. Yes.
Did I hand you that letter?
This one?
Yeah, 27th of March.
Yes.
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 And 3 copies so you can browse. What number would that be? GG 12, please. Now, I just want to clarify one thing. This list of accredited local observers. Now, you have also provided a list of the accredited local observers for PSC.
Yes.
If you see that list, will you be able to identify it?
Yes. Yes.
Might that be admitted as GG 13? Now, so your organization had several dozen accredited observers
Yes.
around the country, correct?
Yes.
And when you speak from the witness box and when you prepared your report, you had input from all of those people.
That's correct.
On March the 25th, you, when I say you, I mean the PSC,
Yeah.
The copies.
I'm washed down in paper, I beg your pardon. The last thing was,
13.
right, here we are, they are right here.
Can I just ask, this
Sure.
list of accredited local observers are just for your organization?
Yes.
On the 25th of March, PSC again wrote to the chairman of GCOM.
I would have to see that.
Okay, sure.
Yes, I think you submitted we
The
write to this
response.
letter. Yes, yes, we did write
the
this
response, yes. Might this be admitted as GG14, copies for the commissioners? Okay. So I want you to have a look at that list again. What number was it?
13. GG.
Yes, GG13. Now, this list has several dozen names on it, not so?
Yes.
And I am seeing the names Tenny, Pusty, Pauline Chase.
Yes.
They are Guyana Bar Association
Yes.
observers, not so?
Yes, but they all came under the under the umbrella of the Private Sector Commission.
I see. Commissioners, it is close to 3 o'clock and we have some video
Yeah.
material to be shown.
We can continue for a while.
Okay, great.
Are you going to go to the video now?
Yes,
So, well, I just want to, there have been a number of letters to international organizations
Yes.
in which there were serious representations being made.
Yes.
And they were all signed by you.
Yes.
On the 23rd of April, you sent a letter to the chairperson of GCOM.
Yes.
And your opening lines, would you like to see it?
Yes.
GG8, please. We write to express our deepest concern about the fraud that was perpetrated by the senior staff of GCOM during the Region 4 tabulation process, which has resulted in a protracted legal process leading to the delay of the official election results.
Yes.
I want to ask you, Mr. Gouveia, was there ever a letter of response from GCOM, from the chair of GCOM, denying this fraud that you referred to in the opening sentence?
I think we do have a reply to this letter in the, but I don't remember exactly what she said, but there was a reply to this letter.
So let's see if we can find that.
yes, Chairman, I was just going to suggest, that perhaps I could look at the letter and have it shown to him. Right.
Is that the letter we asked for the SOPs? I think we did ask for copies of the GCOM SOPs.
No, that's not the
We have
reply.
one letter
This is,
from GCOM dated March 26th.
yes, I'm looking to
And
see what.
refers to two letters from you dated March 20th and March 25th.
Okay.
This letter is dated April 23rd.
Okay.
Yeah.
So my question is, did you ever receive from GCOM and or the chairperson of GCOM a letter denying this fraud that you referred to here?
We had constant communication. I can't remember. I don't remember. I don't recall if we had a reply from her at this time.
You can't remember?
No.
Okay. I want to take you to if there was a response, would that be part of the records of the private sector?
Yes, yes.
Can you help us?
All of these documents came from the records of the Private Sector Commission, so I imagine it would have been in this one. Yes.
Well, I don't know if.
And if it isn't, I will check and get it back
produced
to you.
everything.
I know it's a lot of paper that I have here, so I was quickly rifling through to see if I had
Omitted
such.
a letter.
Yes, no,
But maybe you
I
could-
don't
Well,
have
a
it.
check can be made because
Tomorrow,
Sure,
rather than.
yes, I do have one other document which I had now realized that I forgot to put in.
can Mr. Gouveia be shown the press release which is dated March 5th? March 5th, press release. Private sector.
Okay.
GG4.
PG4. Private sector press release.
Yes, sir.
This is not a private sector.
Dated March 5th. GG4, I believe it was.
And this one. Yeah, two.
Yes,
That
I
was a
have.
statement.
I'm referring to the second paragraph, Mr. Gouveia. It is clear to all that the chairman of GCOM is allowing, without objection, the attempts to perpetuate election fraud under her watch.
Yes.
Were you the author of this press release?
I was the chairman of the Private Sector Commission, and yes, I did not. When a private sector, when a press release is done by the Private Sector Commission, it is drafted and then it is circulated by all before it is issued. And so there are people who draft this based on the agreement of everybody in the room.
So you would have agreed to this?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. Was there ever a denial from the chair of GCOM or GCOM of this very categorical statement?
No.
No denial. Third paragraph. The tabulation process has certainly raised doubts about the integrity of the GCOM chair, the chief elections officer, and some of their staffers. Was there any disputation, any denial of what was set out there by the Private Sector Commission?
No.
No. Thank you, sir.
Chairman, Commissioners, may I, with your leave, I forgot one of the documents out. Now, sir, you spoke about having written to the OAS as one of the organizations who you were trying to, get involved in the whole process. Now, did you see or have you produced a copy of a statement issued by the OAS Observation Mission dated 12th March 2020?
Can I hold it?
Sure.
Yes.
Yes, is that a document you produced to council?
Yes.
I'm asking that this be admitted as GG 15. Might we go to the videos?
Yeah.
Yes.
So, I want you to look that way. Well, first
This is crazy. I just left the GCOM Tabulation Center in Region 4, and the count had started back. And by the time I got here, only to hear that the GCOM officers have stopped the count and walked out to the room again. And so this is real an attack on the democratic process. That they would walk out to the room, and that room is filled with international observers, with local observers, with 5-party agents. Why would they do that? I mean, it's just crazy that the GCOM staff we just started back. They stopped at 9 o'clock, and we just started back not even half an hour ago. And then they probably worked for 15 minutes and then walked out to the room again. Brothers and sisters, I don't know what to tell y'all. This is, and you know, it's really damaging. It's really damaging an electoral system that was so well run, with such credibility. And for them to use all nine, we have 10 regions. 9 of the regions are declared already. The only region left outstanding now is Region 4. And this is becoming a complete masquerade. And so I hope that the international community looks at this and deal with this very strongly. I mean, I don't believe that anybody's going to leave that room tonight. Nobody's going to leave GCOM. They're going to be right in that room until the GCOM senior people come out there. But it's a real challenge. We were there all day today. We were there today when, much to our horror, the GCOM staff started calling numbers from a spreadsheet that was not connected to the statements of poll, and the numbers coming off the spreadsheet had no relevance to the statements of poll. And then eventually we had to raise an alarm and had it stopped. They had an emergency meeting of the GCOM commissioners and the chairperson, and they agreed to stop the process, and they agreed to return the process to where it should be, where the statements of poll was going to be read, and that was going to be put into the spreadsheet with all the party agents there witnessing it. And that process started, and Lowenfield came and he made a commitment to everybody that process was going to go throughout the night until it's finished. And then within an hour of it starting, they stopped it. And then we waited again another 3 hours. And now they stopped it again, they walked out of the room. So I'm not sure, I am really baffled as to why would GCOM staff completely smear the repetition of these elections? These elections today were praised by every single international observer up to the time of the counting of the poll at the polling station. When it moved to the next level, which was to come to the returning officer, all the regions declared. Now just one region needs to be declared, and this nonsense has happened again. So I just wanted, because I know that a few minutes ago I did say that they started, and by the time I turned off my phone and came here, only to hear that they stopped it again. So I'll monitor it, and hopefully we'll keep everybody updated. But it's a terrible thing that is happening in Guyana. This is a real attack on our democracy. And I don't know how anybody in their right mind in 2020 could do this to a country like Guyana that is on the verge of such enormous prosperity, a prosperity that will benefit every single man, woman, and child in this country. You know. And I made the point, the U.S. ambassador made it very clear, that the U.S. stands ready to work with a democratically elected government of Guyana. So any government that is elected by a fraudulent system, electoral system, is not a democratic government. And the international community will come down like a ton of bricks. We have never had an army of foreign observers like we have. We have the European Union, the Commonwealth Secretariat, the OAS, CARICOM, the Carter Center, all the local observers. I mean, this has been a most highly scrutinized elections because of what is happening to Guyana. And why would they? And they really did a good job. I mean, with everything that we went through, GCOM did a really, really good job in getting these elections. Only now, for this to happen, it is mind-boggling that they would do this to themselves. Anyway, guys, sorry about that. I'll talk to you later if anything else develops. Thank you.
Right. So this this recording was made on the night of the 4th. Yeah.
Yes.
And that is you setting out. Sorry, night of the 5th, and that is you setting out PSC's observations up till that point in time,
Yes.
correct? I'm asking for this to be admitted as GG16. Next video, please.
I have never seen a more transparent effort.
His name?
Mr. Gould, the former Prime Minister of Jamaica.
And had
Mr. He was the
former Prime Minister
of Jamaica, and he was the head of the OAS observer team.
Yes. So had he been in Guyana as an observer?
Yes.
An international observer?
Yes.
Can you recall which group he represented?
The OAS.
The OAS, thank you. Will you continue?
Alter the results of an election. And this is being illustrated now as the recount proceeds.
Make any sense out of it. If we can't do better, let's move on to another video.
One of those voting stations.
Recognize that person on screen?
Yes.
And is that the EU ambassador to Guyana?
Correct.
Was he here as a part of their observer mission for the March 2020 elections?
He is the resident ambassador, but he was a designated observer for the elections.
Thank you.
What's his name?
Sorry?
His name?
Fernando.
Pumps
Yes.
From the different parties, you could see the presiding officers, you could see the members of the voting committee tables, and they were all extremely conscientious. One person came to vote, he or she has to identify himself, but then also he had to be seen on the list, and there were pictures, which in my country we never had pictures, so I was quite positively impressed, and everybody could see everything. And at the end of the vote, he had to dip his finger on ink, which in my country we never did. So, I mean, it was safeguard after safeguard after safeguard. It was impossible to cheat.
PSC?
The last, yes.
Yes. Can we move on?
And 4109, Annual 3, Acting Plus AFC 133, CG 2, LJP 3, PTPC 406, PRP 3, TCI 2, TNM 0, URP 0, 352. 4110.
That is the statement of poll number 4109, correct?
Yes.
And the numbers called were different from the numbers that we were shown on the sheet.
That's correct.
The audio which we got was different from what we were shown on the sheet. Now the voice of the person calling, is that a GCOM worker calling?
Yes. Yes.
I'm asking that that be admitted as GG18.
Do you know the name of that person?
No, sir.
Can we move on to the next video?
U plus AFC.
In evidence. One after that.
which was being led by returning officer Claremont Mingo.
We said it very clearly. This tabulation process for Region 4 was not credible. It was not reflecting the will of the people. It has clearly followed a process which was not the right process. I saw it personally. I was there. I was in the tabulation center. But again, it doesn't really matter that I saw it personally. What really matters is that all our observer missions saw it. So this goes back to what I just told you before. It is a mistake to underestimate the intelligence of people and of the people of Guyana as well, because I'm tempted to say that we all.
That's as far as we can get apparently. So might that be admitted as GG19? So these are our exhibits, and this is the evidence of Captain Gouveia.
Thank you very much, Captain.
No.
Yeah, you're reading
Yes.
from it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Captain.
Thank you.
Happy birthday.
Thank you very much.
Where are we now?
Where are we? Well, we don't have another witness.
Yeah.
It's-
So we'll now take the adjournment until 9 o'clock tomorrow.